Alright guys,
Ask me if I'm listening.
so in this video,
I'm not.
I'm going to be trying to briefly, but to be honest, more in depth actually, going over a refresher of the 5.8 changes to the Super Mega Death Rocket, and then a more better look at the 5-point changes to the minigun's attack speed on Jinx. Because of some confusion I've been seeing in terms of what exactly the changes are and what the changes mean, what they do, things like that, etc. Maybe not 5.8 too terribly much, because that one's been out for a little bit. People might have figured that one out a little bit more better, but at this point, I was even in the game not but a few days ago where I was able to kill somebody down lane. They had escaped, I want to say probably back towards their tier 2. I was able to snipe them from behind my tier 1, and they got very angry at the fact that I was able to do that, because they were like, it was nerfed, it's not supposed to be able to do that anymore, and some other stuff, and that's not quite exactly how it works. So, for a brief refresher, in 5.8 what they did was they hit the point blank range on the Super Mega Death Rocket, and that's it. So now if you try and hit somebody at point blank range, at level 6 especially, which is what we're going to really be talking about, it will only do 25 damage to a full health enemy. But they didn't touch the execute damage, so it still does execute damage. If you have low life and I shoot you with it, even at point blank range, it's still going to kill you if the execute damage takes, 25% of your health at level 6, and that's of your missing health, and that's enough to take out whatever health you have left. And now the reasoning behind this was counterplay. One of the more primary complaints I see when people cry that Jinx is overpowered is that they don't like playing on the timetable that she's a snowball that's impossible to stop in the late game. And that's actually really it. So I'm going to help them out by saying, oh, maybe because it's maybe harder to counterplay her or something, right? And in that sense, okay, let's go off of that. And I would have to agree, even though she is my favorite champion, I'm going to agree that before 5.8, counterplaying her was a little bit hard, because the counterplay to her was, she's more of a poke-esque champion, sieging. That's why with the rocket launcher she even gets long range. That's why the ult is a long range ult, or even global zap. The shock pistol is a poke. The idea is to keep people at a distance, wear them down, poke them down, and then kill them maybe, and then take turns with the minigun, etc., etc. Counterplaying her was hard, because then you could play like Graves with the damage that the ult used to do at level 6, which was like 125 plus 50% bonus attack damage. And not a lot of people are very tanky at level 6 when they're maybe trying to gank. And if you try and come in and dive her under a tower, and she can just burst down a whole chunk of your life suddenly in one go, not even after a trade or something, but just like immediately, that kind of really did make it harder than to stop the snowball. So then those people that were saying that kind of had some reasoning to be saying that, right? Because that's not how it's supposed to work. She's a late game carry, and now all of a sudden in lane it's impossible to kind of gank her well to try and stop that snowball from going. So pretty much as soon as she landed on Fountain, the snowball was kind of started rolling already, right? So that's what that was supposed to do. That was 5.8. 5.10 deals with the fact that she was also pretty decent in the mid game. If anything, you could say the snowball got rolling in the mid game, which was also supposed to be more time for you to counterplay. Like 5.8 was supposed to make it easier to counterplay her in the early game. Problems still remain that you couldn't really do so in the mid game, try and stop it. Snowball still got going in the mid game. It's not supposed to be so deadly until the late game. So what they did is they changed the speeds. Now for those people who either don't play, or they are playing like with the static group, or I call it the static group rotation, in which you have those 10 champions when you start that you get to keep until you hit level 5 or 6, and then that's when you get the weekly free champ rotation. And as far as I know, Jinx is still part of that group.
guns.
Okay, so for a refresher then, there's 18 levels as you level up. As you kill minions, you kill even structures a little bit, you gain gold, you kill opponents, you level up this bar under the portrait here, and you can level it up 18 times. You have 18 levels, and per level you get to put a point in each one of these abilities. When you start the game, since you start level 1, you get to put a point into one of these levels, right? And so with Jinx in particular, a lot of people go with the minigun first. You can switch to the rocket launcher. It does help you in lane especially. And of course, when my nose is fine all day, I start this video and now my nose starts running for some reason.
Whatever.
I apologize for that.
Start shooting.
So, back on point, you can only level up your ult at level 6, 11, and 16, but the minigun, for example, you could max out by level 9, which is about mid-game, not late game. And so in mid-game, at the old numbers, per point, you could go 30, 55, 80, 105, and 130, and pretty much that means at level 9 you had 130 extra attack speed because she's a hyper carry, so she has a bunch of attack speed. It's a crazy steroid. It's very fun in my opinion. It didn't make you like a really great duelist, but it actually gave you a little bit better dueling potential too. So it made her kind of well-rounded in like in all phases of the game a little bit with that alone. Because from that you could make the snowball go faster. You could get it quicker. You could take objectives quicker. Because when you usually play the game, you usually build items and stuff like down here, right here. 6 slots for items. You probably would have like a BF sword, maybe completed boots, depending how well the game was going. Maybe you have complete Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer. You have ridiculous amounts of attack speed. Like I want to say, what if you have a Phantom Dancer on top of 130? You have like 180 attack speed mid-game, and you're melting towers way too easily. And considering that she's not supposed to be a mid-game power specter, that's not the way it's supposed to be played out. So this is more of a that's why I say it's kind of not really a nerf. It's more of a balance thing, in my opinion, because yeah, it does reduce her attack speed because the new numbers involved to go 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So if you max it by level 9, you only have 70% attack speed. But what they did is they introduced these scaling attack speed per level. So what that means is with those numbers, which you can all see all of this in the patch notes by the way, at level 1 it's 0, but then it goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, and then 70. So that actually means at level 9 you'd have an additional 25% attack speed. You'd be at 95. So deficit still of about 35%. But again, with items and stuff, with maybe say a dagger and a zeal, because maybe you're building parts of the boots or part of the Phantom Dancer, which the dagger goes into both of those, and that's why I brought up the zeal too. You're gonna have some extra attack speed after that, so you're still gonna be alright mid-game. You're just not gonna be as formidable as you might have used to be, which is part of the point. They still want you to be strong late game, to the point it actually is a late game buff, because speaking onto those scaling abilities, level 16 you'll break even now. You get that 130 because you'll have 70 and then you have that 60 extra by scaling. Level 17 you'll have 65, so 135 actually, and then level 18 you'll have 70 extra, so you'll be at 140. It's actually a 10% late game buff pretty much at that point. So it's an overall nerf because maybe most teams know how to close out a game before level 18, but all things considered, it's actually a majority nerf, but actually a slight late game buff, because that's what Riot likes to do. They like to buff strengths and nerf weaknesses, which was 5.8. So in other words, the combination between these two was to make it easier to counter player to stop the snowball, and then make her snowballing come later, make it harder to get to, and make it later to get to as well. Because we're going to touch on win rate now a little bit, because I think this is actually kind of important to go into. Back at 5.8, I'm going to butcher this name, I know it, and I'm sorry. I want to say it was right. It's either pronounced Gypsy Lord or Gypsy Lord, I believe. The designer behind Jinx made a comment that went along the lines of, Jinx has become one of those champions with a dedicated player base, along the lines of people like, Lee Sin, Riven, Graves, Yasuo, especially like in solo queue and ranked. And what that means is, if you come across one of those kind of players on live, they probably have over 30 games under their belts with that champion, because they're one of those I main this kind of champions. Like me, for example, I played, if I'm ever playing AD carry, which is my favorite position, I'm playing Jinx probably like every time. That's the only champ I'll probably play in that position. That's because it's my favorite champ too, so it's kind of reaching that tier. But I bring that up not because, oh, so it's like a favorites thing, is that what's going on here? No, but because of that dedication, most people, there are some people who will drop her when they see like a nerf coming. Some people who won't play her anymore because she was just kind of like the flavor of the month kind of thing, or she just fit well in a comp. And then there's those people who will then adapt to whatever the nerf is, and they'll still play her anyway. So this is not, so I bring that up because this is not like a Lucian or Olaf situation with her. They're not getting her.
Whatever.
But at the same time, some people might drop her because of that. But for the majority of her player base in particular, they'll just adapt and learn how to play around that, which was part of the point that was being made. And also with her win rate then, because it is kind of high, so people are like, why don't you then Olaf or Lucian her? It's because then that experience and then that reasoning, kind of like the adapting kind of thing, so to speak, that's going to make her win rate always, actually in their opinion, it's going to always sit comfortably above 50%. Like they could axe her if they really wanted to, and because of her player base in particular, they'll just find ways to work around that. Like me, for example, if they did that, I'm still going to play Jinx anyway. I don't care. So good luck if they decide to go that route. For example, even with this nerf in particular, which doesn't bother me too terribly much, I still went and made a room page that gives me about 41% attack speed. So technically, I still kind of have a lot of that attack speed that was supposed to be lost, which is not cheating. It's an option everybody can have. You can do it. That's part of the adapting. So, but in contrast, you can't really count me in that though, because I kind of made the page long ago for some off-meta builds that I did to combine it with some lifesteal and some other crazy times. But that's part of the point. So that's part of the point though, the adaptability. So when he brought up that quote, that was just what that really meant. So it's more of an experience thing at this point too, why her win rate is going to remain high. And yeah, if it gets too crazy, they'll try stuff, but they don't think that she's in too far of a not good place that they have to do too much to correct her to fix stuff. But with 5.8, trying to strengthen early counterplay, even late counterplay to that option, and then 5.10 now to try and make that late game harder to get to make it more bearable. So that she might be my favorite champion, but I gotta admit how annoying it is to play against a Jinx, go even with her for like a very long time. We're both 0-0-0. She kills me one time off maybe a good gank or something, and I lose both my towers in one minion wave before I get back to lane. That was annoying. So this is supposed to help stuff like that. And
I don't even think once
I doubt, so I've tried playing it without the rune page too, just so I could say I've had experience with the whole adaptability thing I brought up, and then without it. And like I said, it's pretty good still. Like dueling is hit a little bit, but tower dives, because that was one of the main concerns out here. How are you supposed to survive tower dives? You're supposed to, that's the thing. You're supposed to gun them down with the speed from the minigun, pow there, and proc her passive and run away. Because if you could flash, but they could flash, so that wasn't really much of an escape. If you were Tristana, you could flash, they could flash, you could rocket jump. You were Caitlyn, you could flash, they could flash, you could net gun. You're Lucian, you could dash. Jinx doesn't really have all that. So I kind of apologize taking that shot earlier, because I wanted to be as unbiased as possible at the people who cry that she's overpowered. But she really does have some notable weaknesses too, to also stop those snowball things. She is relatively slow, and she has no escapes. The flame choppers are nice, but they're zoning, and they're really for team fights, because she's more of a team fight carry. That's why she has the AoE damage on the rocket launcher, things like that. So I mean, yeah, if you throw the flame choppers in the right spot, like throw them where you're going to be instead of where they are, you can use them to escape. It's pretty good. But you watch like professional games in regions, not just the LCS, but just in regions in general, they'll say she doesn't have no escapes. Korea, for the longest time, they didn't really want to play her too much because she had no escapes, the lack of escapes. They didn't really like that. So there's ways to now punish all of that, because before that always existed, but it was still hard to get to her, right? Because the flame choppers are 3, so I mean, if it's like you support and your jungler going in and she gets all 3, if you're like, okay, well crap, right? then she burst all three of you down, and whoever's taking aggro might die now. So now, all in all, it's all coming together to try and make it a little bit easier to play against Jinx, rather than take Jinx down notches herself. Because what the quote goes to separate the good players from the great players. All the great Jinx players, I'm not one of them, mind you, I am not. Will know how to play around these anyway, and that's part of the dedicated player base I think I brought up earlier, is that they'll know how to play around those too. So I really doubt she's gonna like disappear or something. You probably still see a lot of her. She's still a really good champ to use in my opinion because of all the tricks and gimmicks she still has despite her weaknesses. So with all of that said, we went behind 5.8, the reasoning, went behind 5.10, the reasoning, and also then to bring up, if for some reason they do change something back, like they decided they did go too far, like the dueling maybe was hurt too much, I do want to back up. The dueling was, I say it's hit a little bit, because overall it is a nerf after all, so something was hit a little bit. It was kind of hit maybe, but she wasn't like a Vayne or Kalista or Draven to begin with anyway, right? So that was never supposed to be a really strength of hers anyway. You can't like, minigun somebody, tumble around, shoot them with a rocket, tumble away, or something. You were never really supposed to do that, like hop around them while you're like hitting them with zap every 3 seconds. That was never the point, right? So, no pun intended. Of course there's a pun intended.
Ask me if I'm listening.
So if the dueling was hurt, but it wasn't hurt too terribly much, I don't see them switching anything back, is what I'm saying. In general, I say she's fine. But to finish, if they do for some reason revert something, or if they just change something further, I'll make another video and trying to explain those kind of changes as well.
Let's just
I think at this point we've gone over just about everything, including the changes and oh hey, there's people on my front door. I probably need to go shove them back now because as you see I'm only level 2, everybody else has gotten up to like level 10. I guess I'll bring up real quick, so adaptability, what that could mean, what that could look like a little bit is, like for example use the rune page, not very advantageous perhaps, because then I don't get like scaling runes and stuff like that, but it does help me keep winning trades. Before even 5.10 came in, I'd have crazy attack speed then by level 9. When I maxed it without items, I could have like 200 close to with items. So then with lifesteal, I could actually arguably build like some lifesteal first and sustain in lane forever. It's just things like that. Maybe you use the utility page a little bit more often for the speed weakness if you're trying to get over that, because now, especially with 5.10, they changed that. You can have like 20 speed out of combat, something like that.
I'm crazy.
On top of what the 1.5% increase, which will take you up to like 330. So suddenly you'll be like, I think around 350, and you're like 5 faster than Vi. Which, despite the lore, throw the lore out the window, is a really good counter to Jinx in the game. Probably because there's no treasuries on Summoner's Rift. Wow! Okay, see what I mean? That's pretty bad. I need to actually go catch up to my levels right now. So, if, like I said, if anything else comes out, I'll explain it later. Good luck and have fun on the Rift. Feel free to check out the patch notes. By now, I'm pretty sure they're out. I'd be willing to explain anything more in depth as well that I might have missed or that I talked about and then forgot to continue going over. So, with that said, this is pretty much the end of the video at this point. Also, I would also actually stress real quick, don't just take my word for it. If for some reason you're even watching my video over someone else's video, there are tons of better Jinx players out there. Like, I main her and she's my favorite, but I'm not like a Jinx god or anything like that. So go obviously look at other people's videos, go look at their opinions and stuff, compare notes if you will. Get better people who play as her's views on it and stuff too. This hopefully just cleared up some of the basics though, of what exactly it meant. And just to stress, remember that itemization like boots and zeals and stuff, and then the scaling attack speed increases exist, because those are, if you ignore those, so to speak, then you it does look like quite a big deficit in the attack speed, and it's really not. It's pretty fine mid game. and it's really a strength late game anyway, so it's pretty good. And so with that, now that we've exceeded the 20 minutes that I didn't want to exceed because I am slow.
Wait, I'm thinking.
Boy, procrastination, huh? Okay, so hopefully though, that since this video went long, it went into enough detail that it cleared up a couple of things if they weren't clear. And that's pretty much the end of this video. I'll make more, like I said, if they change anything.
Alright.
And at this point, I'm delaying because I really don't want to forget anything too much, and then may have to make like another 20-minute video because I have no video editor at the moment, so I can't add on if that happens. No, actually, no, that's just about everything, actually. We went over the win rate, went over the nerfs, went over the reasonings, and hopefully...
Nope, you're a death machine for life.
We'll see. If they do, like, more nerfs even in the future, then I'll just make another video at that point. Now I'm repeating myself. Because then I'm going to press the stop video button, and then I'm going to remember something, and I'll be like, oh, crap, well, we forgot that. Anyways...
I don't even think once about blowing stuff up.
That's just about everything, actually. So, there we go. That's pretty much the end of the video. Good luck and have fun on the Rift.